and the facilitation of young people into these processes. And I wonder, can you say a bit more about how you think the balance works between facilitating young leaders and leading young people?
That's a good question. I'm not quite sure. Can you just expand on it? Do you mean like when we're working with young people that we're kind of... explain what you mean.
When does one lead as a carer or an adult guide, and when does one follow? And how do you balance the responsibilities between those two modes of working with young people?
That's a good question. I think... Are we talking about the balance of power here? Because I think when we talk about co-design and co-production, which is the kind of highest level of impact that you can have as somebody in the process, we have to be really honest about what, on a big development project, for example, or even on a small change locally, what are the kind of options available? Like, what are we going to allow local people, including young people, to be able to bring to both the process but also the outcomes? And I think that it's hard because so many things are already in place. You were talking to me just before about your own house, and like it's complicated fitting everything together. We were talking about biodiversity net gain and sustainable urban drainage and all the kind of elements of that's before you even get to the kind of transport. So there doesn't feel like there's an awful lot of space that you can really allow people to have an impact. And so I think that in terms of getting young people's voices in, it can sometimes actually result in just a nice bench that they painted. And I worry when those conversations are had. In fact, I don't worry. I feel completely cynical about them because I just don't feel like painting a bench gives you ownership over a space. It's not enough. It's not enough in today's world with your future. I think if you're fobbing them off with nothing, and actually it's worse in a way, it's tokenistic, than actually asking the hard questions. And I mean, obviously, one of the projects I've really liked being involved in a little bit is the Olympic Park, because it's a really huge space where actually kind of ways in which young people use that space and issues about gender are really starting to allow the park authorities to have questions about how to design a space kind of for and with young people. And those of us who visited the park over the last sort of 10 or so years will have watched the skaters. They will have watched the kind of young people performing. They will have watched the way young people kind of subvert maybe the kind of culture that we think is the norm. And actually, we've really got to keep our eyes open to some of that stuff. And I think that we've also got to kind of recognise that whilst we as adults are operating in a world, they're in a parallel world where other things are going on right in front of our noses. So a lot of the work that we have to do isn't just about designing a thing or having an idea and then building it like the bench, but it's about, is the process fair? Are you really hearing what their lives are like? And are you giving them something they really need? And then are you also on these very long development projects, can sometimes take like 20 years, are you changing and responding? And are you willing to let them use space in ways that might be quite uncomfortable for you? Because I think when you start having those conversations, we talked about football earlier on, I mean, why are we are really stuck in terms of not being understanding that kids like playing football close to home. And so we've put no ball game signs up for years. We've created cages. Some of these things work, cages work, but sometimes we just have to confront the uncomfortable truths about what kids are doing, where they're doing it, and how we can kind of negotiate with them the use of that space. But otherwise, we talk in quite abstract terms. So I think, yes, creative, yes, co-creation, but I think it's quite good actually to talk about how they want to use the space that we've mostly given up for cars, but also we might have given up for a nice rose garden, or we might have given up for all sorts of other things that we think are like really important and valuable. And actually, we need to say to ourselves, can we let go of some of this stuff? Any of us? All of us? Even those of us who feel like we're dead right on and really, really down with the kids?
Please do.
Yeah, I I think one addition that I would say is that if we really want to listen to kids, I think that would be the difference. For example, if we guide when we are with them, like we guide them, or if we really want to only facilitate and listen from them, I think it's also very important to use different ways of expression. Because sometimes, for example, if you want to design a natural playground and you ask them what they want, just like orally, maybe they will just answer like what they know about natural playground, like swings and, I don't know, slides and things like that. But if we give them options to draw or just to play with clay or just to do like different ways, using different forms of expression, I think this is more like genuine, the way that they express themselves, and they could tell us more than answering orally. So I think one of the ways of not like leading and more like facilitating is just to allow these different ways of expressions that I think kids are going to be more genuine with what they want to say. And I think it connects a lot with your work.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Even listening to the other panel, I was like, oh, I've got to make all these notes because it's fantastic. I think maybe because before people were comfortable, so when you're comfortable, you don't have to challenge many things. But, you know, young people, especially if you've got the internet now with all the searches, they're not idiots. Margaret Thatcher sold lots of playing fields, and now you give them a tiny little cage. Like, they can see that, you know, but then you've still got people masquerading that, oh, okay, this was great, this was fine. And then even when you go on about Brexit and you just look at all of this stuff, people, they can see that. So it might be fine if you're comfortable and you're homeowning and you can sit there and it's no problem. But young people can see that and they're smarter. And the thing is, there's so many opportunities as well. Because what was done before, fine, that was before. But right now, an opportunity, and when you see about architecture, so with Live and Breathe, I'm an artist, and yeah, I've done all these fancy things as an artist, but the main thing is to say that, okay, you can be an artist because you're a mother who wants to roller skate, so she does a roll and stroll, and that's the whole thing. So again, because looking at spaces, what's in your 15 minutes or so on and so forth, as a black mother, going to the coffee shop wasn't so inviting. Because some of these areas are black areas, but then the coffee shops are very expensive, and it's not so inviting. Getting on roller skates and the kids in the buggy and the stroller. So then you can use it in Burgess Park. So then you start to see, this is interesting, and that ties in exactly to what you're saying, Stratford, because young people love to roller skate. It's like, get off your iPads and get off your phones and get off social media. Now you've got roller skates. Don't roller skate here. Yeah. And you're like, what's going on? Whereas if you then look, and then you look at all the crazy things. So South Bank is their 75th anniversary. It's the 50th anniversary of the skate park, and that had a fractures thing. But Palace, the brand, started off in a skate park. Now they've opened up their shop in Korea, which has the undercroft of Queen Elizabeth Hall as their design there. So again, for young people, architecture imprints, and the fact that they're opening up in the shop in Korea, and then with the World Cup, Nike have sold the most number of England shirts because of Palace. They've got a collaboration. So you look at all of these things, how they tie together, and if it wasn't for the architecture of the undercroft, if it wasn't then for the skaters coming along, and that's 50 years. So that's really exciting. So what are the other exciting things that can be done? It's a chance to learn, whether it's bringing nature into cities and to say, actually, this is actually tangible. The problem is big business and stuff is very out there. Like, you can't own your own data center, but you can put a solar panel or plug in solar into your house, and you can get a young person to say, hold on a minute, let's now see, this electricity is sunny now. Is your house south facing? Is it west facing? So they can see that. They can see all of this stuff. So there are such exciting opportunities to get them involved. And I think that's what we should look at. And we might not know the answers because we've learned something else, but they can, and we need to do this stuff. Even retrofit, they can know that we were talking, know the difference between PIR and wood fiber and phase shift. Technical. So yeah, anyway, so it's these fun things of bringing them in rather than saying, let's do a tick box because Arts Council said, have community.
I love it. Beauty. I was going to say, let's have a round of applause for that set of answers for everybody. And picking up on the theme of not just asking the question, but listening, not just listening, but hearing, and not just looking, but really seeing. I'm looking out at the butterflies again and wondering, are there questions that you all have for the panel? And I'm seeing a lot of hands. I'm hoping I have help with microphones. Let's start nearest first for earliest time. So I'm going to be able to take, I think, maybe 3 questions maximum, and then put them to the panel.
First, thank you, the 3 of you, both 4 of you, for a wonderful time and talks. I think I work more on the side of, planning new places and new towns and new areas and urban areas. And it's always this conversation about stewardship and community and social value and what you just said, create community and suddenly magically community will appear. And in terms of young people, how can you ingrain young people into the stewardship of a new place or a new neighborhood? And we were having a conversation on the previous panel about taking photographs of these new neighborhoods and there's no people. And the photographs are completely empty. And I think that happens a lot when there's not a proper stewardship strategy. So in your experience, how do you set up these beautiful community stewardship for these new play areas or these, nature-driven green spaces or whatever? Yeah.
Great. We'll take 2 more, and I'll let the panel pick which ones they want to answer. So think about your answer. One more. Just want to make sure we hear more from the crowd. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline from Hackney. We've done a lot of work in Hackney around playing out and creating spaces, and we work with the Young Futures Commission. So it's one of the first things that the young people did, Dinah, was kick the adults out, which was kind of great. But there's something about safety here and perceptions of safety, and it's not just about permission and that sense of belonging, who's allowed to be in the space. It's also about the perceptions from the young people themselves. So one of the most interesting moments for me was when there was a board of maps of all the parks and green spaces in Hackney, and the young people stuck red and green stickers on the parks to say where they felt safe and where they didn't feel safe. And they were fascinated because some of their younger siblings were saying places felt unsafe that the older siblings did feel safe. So it's who was that space for, and did they enjoy that sense of propriety and permission, I suppose. And I'm interested in where you'd feel that boundary lies around who is it safe for and who's deciding that.
Thank you. All right, I'll go back to the panel to wrap. So we've heard stewardship, putting people back in the picture, and safety. Lais, you were going to jump in. Please go.
I would just give them first opportunity to participate and ask them. I think one way of having a frequent or a systematic participation of kids and adolescents is just to create a little board. So, for example, you're going to create this natural playground in a neighborhood. Just invite a very diverse group of kids or youth or adolescent, and make sure that you ask their opinion. Another thing that it's very important is also to give them feedback. Once they hear, you need to commit with their ideas, and whatever you do, just go back to them and make sure that you give them a feedback, because sometimes they feel not very excited about that. Okay, so I went there, I shared, and they did not do anything, So I think this is also very important. But I think to have these little boards and making sure that they participate. Another way, it's also whenever you are constructing the place, bring them to participate, just to play with whatever they have there, because if they think that that place was designed with their opinion, that place is going to be theirs, this sense of belonging. And this is when you feel like something is yours, you're going to take care of it for the rest of your life. So I think it's just involving them in all the process, before, during, and after, in a very inclusive way.
Nice. Dinah.
Super quick idea. And I I think this is really important to answer both those questions, because I think, again, we have to ask uncomfortable questions. When we start talking about older young people, they will talk about feeling unsafe, particularly when they're not with their parents. So the kind of idyllic playing out really gets challenged at that age. Obviously, we've cut youth services drastically, and that becomes the mantra, but we've cut youth services. And I think that's really difficult, because actually there's lots of, the one thing that is really shining through is the really good outreach play and youth work in the spaces and places in the developments where you can't make enough space. I'm advocating all the time for resource funding, for like trusted adults in the community who can support young people, to support the stewardship, because whilst we can say, but all the youth services have been cut and there's nothing for us to do, and ever were it thus, and I remember your predecessor, Caroline, saying, but we've got all the youth services and they still say there's not enough youth services. So of course we need more youth services, but can we just stop having that conversation for a minute and say there should be more? The young people will talk about trusted adults an awful lot and wanting them outside in their community. And also that spaces change constantly. There isn't a space that is safe and isn't safe can change in the space of one day. And we need to understand those nuances and their daily lives. I'm going to say one last thing. One of the best things a young person said to me was when we were doing think of yourself as a character, and he kind of put a character together as a person. There was a kind of mishmash of a load of people that he knew, and he said, this is my character. What they need to do is they're really into sport. They want to play football for about half an hour, but then they, I don't know, I didn't know if he said dysregulated, but he gets quite angry. He's got anger management issues. He needs somewhere to go to be nice and safe and calm. And suddenly I suddenly kind of got him, he was articulating, we all need complex and difficult and choices. We need choices in our spaces. There isn't like young people want this, disabled people want that, women want this. There's a kind of need for choice and other adults around. So I guess I've tried to paint a really kind of complex and nuanced picture when everyone's looking for a really simple answer. I always think the answer with young people is they're like everything. They're like children, they're adults, they're trying everything out, and they want to basically have a go at everything, and we need to make those spaces safe for them. That's quite a lot of things, sorry.
Thank you. Last word to you, Sega.
To sort of how to encapsulate these things. What I would say is I do think we should be more positive about things, and then also not to put everything at the foot of the door of, let's say, the architect. Like, you do need specialism. We can't just be rolling around thinking we're going to do well. But the architect can make the space, but it's not for the architect now, when people don't populate that space, for them to say, oh, well, now you have the answer for that. Because sometimes it might be simple. You're not going to own a space. Even a kid will know you're not going to own a space if you're on a monthly rolling contract and you've had to move 6 times in 6 years. You can understand why even the parents aren't doing that. So there are some of these structural things where you can have great architectural design, but then you also then have to look at the social contract around it. And exactly what you're saying with the youth services and everything else. And also, it is the thing, like, we do live in London, which is different from other cities, where you can have, if you know Peckham, you've got Rye Lane, and then you've got Bellenden Road. One where someone might feel unsafe, the other one where Anthony Gormley had his, his studio and everything like that. So it's children and people, when you go through London, you go through all different types of whether it's safe or unsafe. You're not going to sanitize everything. But I do think we should be positive. Just because we haven't solved all the issues, we should still solve some, whilst the other ones are trying to be worked out.
What a beautiful place to finish. Thank you, everybody. Please, a round of applause for our panel.